And hello, and welcome to another segment of this Think About It series we've been taking care of. We've gone through two series already. We've talked about the fruit of the Spirit. We've talked about those whatsoever passages. And now we're in the second segment of Psalm chapter 23. Still the same first verse. The Lord is my shepherd. And tonight we're in I shall not want. And with me tonight is Jason Helton from Madison, Alabama. Jason, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Doing great. I appreciate you inviting me on here. I think this is a great thing that you've been putting together. I appreciate you leading the charge here.
So, Jason, tell me exactly what is your role at the Madison Church there?
I'm referred to as our mom, a media outreach minister. I did youth ministry here for about 10 years. I started while I was finishing up college, and then at about year 9 or so, I realized that my tenure in youth ministry was coming to a close. And so we talked with our elders, is there another, I don't want to leave Madison. I don't want to get out of ministry.
Right.
I wasn't looking necessarily to go into pulpit or anything like that. And there were some things that we had been doing in the youth ministry that I felt could be applied to the congregation as a whole. We're a rather large church, I'd say, by my standards anyway. We're upper 900s, close to 1,000. And so communication is not an easy thing around here. And so that was a big part of what I pitched originally. I said, if we had someone that could help us communicate internally, and then it make us a little bit more effective and when we communicate the gospel to the community, utilizing media and technology and those sort of things. So I've been doing that for about 2.5, almost 3 years, in that role of media outreach minister. And I tell you, I've never felt as much job security as I do right now in the midst of this pandemic. All communication has become more challenging, and it's all tech driven. So I was telling somebody the other day, I feel like society, but the church in particular right now, we're as well equipped as we've ever been. Not necessarily prepared, but we're equipped for sure. And so I think it's going to be, I think it's actually been really cool to watch some of the creative ways that people are reaching out, and how we're, as Christians, getting a little bit more creative and getting out of just the routine of things that we've always done, because we have to.
Right. Well,
And
I
I think
appreciate
that's
it.
great. Things like this are a way that have been around for a while. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, if there's any drag or lag on this thing, it's on my part right now, because I'm having a little bit of drag internet wise. And so it may be me. Okay. Well, I for just a few moments here, Jason, I've asked you to talk about this second part of the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Share your thoughts with me on that, please.
Okay. I've never really just taken the time, I guess, to focus in just on that second part. Sometimes you get so familiar with the passage that you forget to really fine tooth comb it sometimes. And so I appreciate this particular phrasing, because I think it's totally set up by the first part. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I shall not want because the Lord is my shepherd is sort of the way I read that. And I spent some time reading through this. And in fact, there are a couple of New Testament verses connected with that as a result of a study I was a part of last night with our college students that I've never connected with here before. So I'll kind of walk you through some of my thinking there.
Okay.
The phrase there, I shall not want, it's not so much that I no longer have any needs, but it's the fact that God is the provider of all those needs. You go and kind of look at some of the language there. It means to lack, or to be lacking, to not have a need, because God is my shepherd, because he is the provider of safety, of sustenance, of all needs that I have. It's not that I don't desire things, but it's that I'm not wanting for anything, because I have all that I need. Essentially, his presence and his role as shepherd is that. Last night we were looking at Mark chapter 4 with our college students, and specifically towards the end there of chapter 4, where Jesus is in a boat with some disciples, and there's a storm that breaks out, and they actually in verse 38, verse 37, it says, "And a great windstorm arose, and the waves were breaking into the boat, so the boat was already filling up with water." So there's a storm outside the boat. It's going crazy. Water's actually coming in the boat, and Jesus is hanging out in the stern asleep, taking a nap. I've been in boats before where the storms were rolling in, and that's an uneasy feeling for me. I am a land dweller, and so being in a boat outside of my element is very nerve-wracking. I can relate to their anxiety there. They go to Jesus, so we'll credit for that, right? They turn to him and they say, "Teacher, do you not even care that we're perishing?" They have this doomsday, the sky is falling, or literally it's storming outside. And he says, "Why are you so afraid? Have you no faith?" When we think about other passages like Philippians tell us to not be anxious. And when we think of Jesus earlier in his ministry, where he talks to people, saying to his crowd, saying, don't be anxious about what you're going to wear, what you're going to eat. Don't have these anxieties of day-to-day living. Sometimes I think we take that and we think that if we get a little bit worried sometimes, then we're sinning. And that's not necessarily, I think, what he's going at there. When you look at Philippians in particular, in chapter 4, verse 6 is where it reads, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." The phrase right before verse 6, "The Lord is at hand." Paul's saying, "Rejoice in the Lord always." Again, I'll say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Now, if you take that after reading Mark chapter 4, Jesus is in the boat. The Lord is at hand. God is my shepherd. I shall not want. I don't have needs that will go unmet. I'm not going to be anxious. I'm not going to allow these anxieties, these stresses, these worries of the world to completely cloud my thinking. A little bit of word study there in Philippians, you'll also find that word, the original root word there for anxious, goes all the way back to a word that kind of has this meaning of distraction. And so essentially these anxieties, these stresses, these worries that come from not realizing or not acknowledging that the presence of God is where all those things go away. That's why I don't have to be anxious. I don't have simply his presence. For those disciples in Mark 4, his presence will calm the storm. I'm right here with you. You think I'm going to let the boat perish? No, that's not how this story ends, right? And so when we think, if I'm a teenager and I'm worried about my graduation, that's not going to happen the way I'd always dreamed it would happen, or I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. You're in this new relationship and now you can't spend time together because of social distancing and all these kinds of things. Whatever it is that has changed the landscape really of our expectation and what we have planned, it should serve as a reminder. And I know emotionally it's hard to get there. It takes a little time for me as well. I'm too much of an emotionally driven person, but when I take the time to sit back and I reflect on a message like Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." And you'll go on to read, it makes me to lie down in green pastures, and some of the deeper meanings of the anointing of oil, but it all comes from that very first phrase of "the Lord is my shepherd." I'm not going to want. I want for nothing because his presence in my life means stability is in my life, means I'm able to overcome persecution. I'm able to overcome disappointment. And you go back to these disciples in Mark 4 and Paul, he's in a pretty rough situation here in Philippians. The Lord is at hand. Understanding as a teenager that the presence of God in your life, it can cause some stability. And if you, just a disclaimer, if you're out there and you're watching this or listening and you're in middle school or junior high, as they called it when I was growing up, just know that you're in the worst of the worst. All right. If you can make it past this stage of life, you're golden, baby. You can make it through it. I think we all agree it's just the worst. Middle school is just the worst. So middle school is that boat in the storm with water coming on and zits popping out everywhere, right? It's just a weird, wacky time of life and if God can be a present in that life and can get you through a rocky relationship, a difficult circumstance like this pandemic that we're in, that no one is, this hadn't happened in over 100 years. So very few people were around at that time. And so we don't have anything to compare it to. That's part of our anxiety sometimes, is that we're looking for something to compare it to. And when there's nothing familiar there, then we feel like we're in the middle of the deep end and we forgot how to swim. But, faith is made for the deep end, right? You learn to swim so you can hold on to the side of the pool. You learn to swim so you can jump in the deep end and enjoy it and be in the water, not so you can stand on the outside, look in. So I really have appreciated this little phrase in particular so much more as a result. And these two other New Testament passages I've never really linked together with it, but for now will ever be ingrained. The Lord is my shepherd. His presence causes me not to want. He's in the boat, so I don't have to worry about what's going on outside of the boat. I don't even have to worry about what's coming into the boat. His presence is the most important thing. And then the Lord is at hand. Don't be anxious about anything. Don't let those anxieties. It's okay to have, to be scared sometimes. Those are all part of the human condition, right? Natural responses to situations. We can't allow those things to totally creep in and filter all of our thinking through that worry. As Christians, we reprogram our thinking to filter through the presence of God in our life. And that's why there's that peace that surpasses all understanding, that God is a peace that sometimes it doesn't make sense. His peace doesn't make sense to the world, but his presence is what gives us stability. So it's a little bit of rambling in there, but,
No, no,
that's
that's
kind of
okay.
where my mind has gone with all of this. So
That's perfect. And I appreciate that so very much, because what I see in that you brought into those very things. If we keep the light, Jesus, in front of us,
Mhm.
there it takes care of things. And I thank you so much for hitting
Absolutely.
the anxious fears, because that's what,
Yeah.
that's what everybody's going through right now. I mean, you scroll social media and you've got everything from doom and gloom to no big deals.
Mhm.
Well, even the no big deals is
Right.
ancient. I'm sorry, I believe that. Those people that are even saying, "Oh, it's no big deal,"
Yeah.
yeah, it's still there. It's still there. Well,
It
thank you
is.
so much for
Yeah.
coming
And I think
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead.
I think a lot of people get caught up in like you're saying, trying to put on a front that I'm supposed to say it's no big deal to come across like I got it all together. But we see over and over again the disciples didn't really have it all together there. But acknowledging that you're scared is fine. Where did they go in Mark 4 when they were nervous? They went to Jesus.
They
And so
went
I think that's the key thing for us to glean from that is, when you're scared, when you're anxious, go to God. Job, when he was angry, upset, and confused, he went to God, and eventually God said, "Where were you?" So be prepared for that response, but take it to God. That's why Jesus says, "Cast all your worries on me." Give the cross. That's for me to bear, right? That's for all of the nasty, the ugly, the worry. Put it on my shoulders. That's what I'm here for. So um, I do think that we get better at that. Hopefully, the older and wiser we get. So
I hope so, at least. Let's put it that way. I can handle the old part.
yeah,
Jason, thank you so much for joining us and bringing this tonight. Folks, we appreciate you
yeah.
watching this tonight. I hope you'll share this with other people around there and let them get a chance to see it. And we hope to be back again tomorrow night for another segment of this Psalm 23 and portion of Think About It. Thank you for joining.